All right, hey, be less precious. The essence of the book Radical Candor is the concept of ruinous empathy. Have you ever noticed that people on the internet, the people that say be kind, like the biggest hell on the internet is when someone has the word be kind or says the phrase be kind. They are the least kind people in the universe. Yeah, we're doing a DHH article. When I see someone say be kind, I know for a fact they're not kind. They're the biggest dicks. They're always the biggest dicks, every single time. That by trying your best to coach employee performance feedback in overly gentle language, you end up confusing the message and cheating the recipient out of the clarity they desperately need to improve or prepare for what happens if they don't. Facts. Hey, Dylan. Hey, by the way, we literally just started this, but Dylan just rated us. If you don't know Dylan, he is the O-Camel champion. Reason, all the good stuff. Check him out. This concept extends to more than just direct employee feedback. This can also seep into other forms of communications policies and ultimately the entire culture. At 37 Signals, we've labeled this broader problem as being overly precious. I actually really like this take. What's his name? TJ. We've talked about this quite a few times, TJ. I don't know if TJ's in the stream, but we've talked about this idea of being overly kind in GitHub PRs where you can't tell somebody what they wrote is bad. And this is this is a big theme right now in programming, like that you have to be extremely gentle with somebody. Like if somebody submits bad code, you should just be able to say like, hey, that was bad code. What's going on here? Like this just doesn't work out at all. I don't know. It's just something that I think is largely lost in our today's world is that we are trying to constantly look out for people's feelings and you rob them of good feedback, because there's nothing wrong with saying what you wrote is bad code. Like, I agree. You have to be politically correct. It's not even political correctness. It's not even that, right? Like political correctness, I don't even want to go there. This is not political correctness. This is people feeling like they're unable to give feedback because they worry that the other person is going to take it bad, right? Like that criticisms of a thing means criticism of the person, which is not true at all. Bad code is bad code. Like here's a fact of life. I look at all the code I've ever written 6 months later, and I think it's shitty code. Why? Oh, why should I have a hard time with someone telling me it's that what code I wrote is shitty, right? Why would I ever have that problem? I don't even like my own code. I don't even like it at all. Like one of my least favorite people to pair program with is myself because I know for a fact that I'm about to dislike whatever I've created. Permitting an environment where people don't have an emotional regulation. Exactly. Like my big worry, like I by the way, I love this concept. I'm very happy that I know people hate DHH, but I love that he's talking about this because this is such a needed topic, especially today, where it feels like everybody is so careful when you just need somebody that comes in and just tells you what it is. DHH on stream, I actually have no problem having DHH on stream. I'm not one of the, I'm just not a person that's really scared to better make sure I say the right thing. I better make sure all the viewers really like me. Oh no. Yes, you can provide constructive criticism without personally attacking someone. Yes. In fact, I would say that if you personally attack somebody, it's not constructive criticism because then you close them off. But you also need constructive listening. You need someone that can listen when what they've built comes under question. You shouldn't need to go sugarcoat it, but you don't have to go Torvalds on people. Exactly. There's constructive listening, I think, is equally as important as constructive criticism. But I think most people don't listen constructively. I think most people, they don't want to. It's too hard because it never feels good to know that what you've written is not that good. Because sometimes, how often are you writing a bunch of code, you set up a PR, you're starting to go through the PR, but it automatically tags people, say with Stash or something, and you realize you left in some code that's I could have done that better, right? I forgot about this small section. I could have done this better. Now I feel bad. And then you realize, then someone comes in and says, hey, this code's not that good. And you're like, yeah, my bad. It was just I didn't revisit that part. My fault, right? Not a big deal. And they're like, yeah, not a big deal. Can you redo that part? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. Not a big deal. Let's go. Right? Take. I need to learn how to take criticism just like I need to learn how to give it. Exactly. It's a two-way street. Criticism is truly a two-way street. Let me give you an example. We used to have an official mental health days for employees. We have an explicit invitation that people really should just take some time off if they felt overwhelmed or mentally fatigued. Here's the old paragraph. Basecamp recognizes, too. I don't understand also. Oh, there must be something behind it. I'm like, what's this two for? What's the two for? That your mental health is just as important as your physical health. Consider taking, by the way, this is great. By the way, this little statement right here, hey, good job on them to say that your mental health is as important as your physical health. By the way, I'm a big proponent of hylomorphism, meaning that your soul and body are one. And so your mental health is your physical health is your mental health. Consider taking a mental health day every now and again when you're feeling overwhelmed or mentally fatigued. If a day or two won't cut it, we'll work with you to find a way to reduce the burden of your work at base camp on your overall mental health. We really do want your work at base camp to be the best work you can do in your life. And we appreciate that that's not possible if you're uncertain about your health. Okay, so this feels like a very... I don't necessarily, I agree in principle with everything said here. Like, in principle, I think that if you're checked out mentally, you're just not going to do good work, right? Like, I think we can all agree with the statement in principle, right? That's precious, overly precious. In fact, I cringe when I now read this. The idea that employees are so mentally fragile that feeling overwhelmed is a reason to be absent is bonkers. I think we also use the term overwhelmed quite a bit, when I think the word we're actually looking for is whelmed. Did you know that there's actually a difference? There's literally whelmed is a term that people used to use all the time that was more accurate to probably describe what we're doing. Whelmed means that you're kind of like under the waves. You're being buffeted by the waves. Like, you're not toppled. You're being buffeted. Overwhelmed is the part where you literally tip over. Like, you're done. You're out. You've been game over, right? I'm whelmed by this stream. I'm whelming so hard, right? Jimmy whelmed, right? And let's see. I do actually agree with this. Like, in some sense, we've had one specific time in my marriage life where I actually truly needed some time off due to we had a miscarriage, and it was really hard on my wife. Postpartum depression is like a real thing and just really causes some bizarre stuff, right? And so this happened in 2017 or something like that. And honestly, like, that was a genuinely hard time. We were in the overwhelmed state as opposed to everyone, we're all whelmed from time to time, but there's like specific parts in life. But I can think of one time in the last 10 years in which having a week off was nice to have, right? And there's a big difference between those two things, right? Everyone feels overwhelmed every now and then, and that's not adequate reason not to show up for work. I'm actually on this team. I'm pretty much completely on this team because I think we overdescribe our emotions for the most part. Could you imagine if the rest of the world ran into something like this, that your trash cans wouldn't get emptied if the truck driver felt overwhelmed? No, just no. We do. It's funny. This is actually such a good point in the sense that how often do you not extend that? Like, that grace that you want to other people, right? Like, it's really, really hard. Like, how often, if you get bad service in a restaurant and you're pissed at the server, you don't even know what's going on. Like, you have no idea, yet you expected that person to be on point. It's fun. We always do these kind of things where you expect somebody else to not have these things, but you love in writing. We all love in writing. This is why Be Kind exists in Twitter profiles, and they aren't kind. They project, right? Not every day is going to be a magical at work. Yeah, dude, most days are just slogs. I mean, that's how work works. Some days you really do just have to power through. If you can't, then use some paid time off to recover, taking it out of the same allowance that someone else would spend on a holiday. In fact, I've come to believe that this type of language and expectation setting actually makes people more fragile. It's a very interesting hypothesis. The more you say that you should take time off if you're feeling overwhelmed, the more you are likely to feel overwhelmed and take time off. I wonder if there's something to that. I can't say that there is or isn't, but there is something very interesting about telling people that you could become overwhelmed and you need to be very, very careful, and about people actually taking that, internalizing it, and identifying wrong things as being overwhelming. It's very interesting. By the way, yes. Okay, so people find this, it's very, very funny. People either hate this or love this. I do like highlighting things. There's something very visually pleasing for me about things being symmetrical. And so, like, when the first and last character aren't there's something about it that makes me really, really, I don't know what it is. It just makes me very happy. You know what I mean? Very, very happy. Also, by the way, I should say thank you. I should say thank you, even though I'm in the middle of something. Hey, complex stack. Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I do mean it. Thanks for the 10 gifted subs. This is very interesting because the hard part, by the way, for those that don't know, I'm trying to agree with this article, even though part of me is kind of fighting against it. Like, because the thing is that you don't want people to pretend that emotions don't exist. I don't want people to pretend that they're not hylomorphic, that somehow their body and their soul are two separate things in which they walk around and one can be injured while the other one isn't. Like, I understand there's real problems, but I also understand the other side, which is sometimes I feel like we make mountains out of molehills, like legitimate mountains out of molehills. I don't know. It's kind of like a weird. It's a weird dichotomy, which is like how do you provide a place for people that are genuinely suffering to get better, and how do you prevent people from accidentally or intentionally taking advantage of it, or even adopting a mentality in which they can't, they actually can't see the forest from the trees because they're so stuck in this thing of trying to find a problem, or they're feeling like there must be a problem. Because, like, real talk, work can be satisfying. Work can be part of your purpose. But work doesn't necessarily guarantee purpose or satisfaction. You know, and I think a lot of times we mistake this kind of like life. We mistake this like life problem. You know, we call these like midlife crises and all that kind of stuff, where you're actually realizing that your purpose isn't as what you thought it was, and you're feeling this like missing out on things. And I feel like it can kind of materialize into this just like continuous dreadfulness because you have no purpose in what you're doing. You're just doing it. And some people right now are making incredible money being programmers, but they don't feel fulfilled because that's not where you get your fulfillment from. And then all of a sudden they get all this money and then things aren't working out and you find yourself just as unhappy, right? Like you read it all the time and we all disbelieve it, right? Like how many times have you read a story about somebody who's made a lot of money and then said, money won't make you happy? And you go, nah, I don't believe that guy. Money will make me happy. No, trust me, if I just had a little bit more, I would be like, you realize you're that person and it's hard to listen to it, right? It's really hard to listen to it. And I'm not, I don't know. Money can make life easier, for sure. No one's arguing that one. I do believe there's something to treat people like they're fragile, they will become fragile. Yes, I do believe that. You know, like a good example of this is that your bones grow by straining them and like actually hurting them, right? You grow your muscles not by treating them very carefully, but by like literally abusing them as much as possible. The opposite of making being careful is the opposite of growth in a lot of things. It's very funny how that can happen, right? But there's a limit. There's always a limit. Nobody is a fool. Everyone understands there's a limit, right? But there's this weird in-between place. Is having a boner the same? Thank you. Bina Jemin. I appreciate your insightful comments. All right, let's keep on going. That it plants the idea that working in front of a computer is so mentally taxing that almost nobody can bear it without occasional mental health days. That's just not true, and it's not helpful. Getting rid of the nonsense is part of how we've been scrubbing the precious out of the organization. We have been far better off for it over the past few years. That doesn't mean scrubbing out caring. It doesn't mean turning it into a hard ass. The opposite of precious is not being cruel. Ooh, I like that. The opposite of precious is not being cruel. I do like this. But being clear. It's expecting a reasonable baseline from people that anyone in the real world could recognize as fair. I believe this is... Can we rename this from SpongeBob case to Twitter case? I feel like this is like... What is a hard ass? A hard ass is just somebody who's just like constantly expecting a lot out of you, right? Like maybe that might not be the right way to say it, but that is intense about your failures and doesn't necessarily celebrate your wins. Being too precious is the same as being too fragile. That's not the goal to aspire to. We should all be chasing higher resilience instead. I do love this, one thing I have been doing, and I've been practicing it on and off for the last couple of years, is actually taking, I know everyone hates this topic, taking ice baths. Like actually taking cold plunges, because it builds pretty heavy emotional resilience. Doing something that is absolutely awful and doing it is really, really hard. Like you have to like, you really have to like go into it going, this is gonna suck. You know what I mean? It increases the T level, sir. It's regardless of the benefits of the physical benefits, there's also like a huge mental benefit, which is that when you do something that is absolutely difficult, things feel not as difficult. Shrinkage maker? Oh, yeah, for sure. You mean like doing React in VS Code? Like doing React in VS Code. Raw egg arc when? I'm not going to raw egg. Sweat tent, then ice bath, then sweat and repeat. Yeah, my wife and I, we've gone on a date where we did ice bath together, and then a 180 degree sauna, then ice bath, then 180 degree sauna, then ice bath, then 180 degree. Not easy. My main disagreement with this article is the same as it would be for the opposite take. People are different. Stop trying to group us all into this works for everyone. It likely doesn't. My main takeaway from that is that you just made everybody the same. You literally just did what you said you shouldn't do. The problem is that everybody likely won't achieve their potential. What you can do and what you think you can do are two very different things. Anchor bias is a real thing. If somebody tells you, hey, it's really, really hard, this is going to be really, really difficult, you should expect this to be hard, you will expect it to be hard. If somebody tells you a trigger warning at the beginning of a movie, more people are affected negatively than if they don't tell you there's a trigger warning. Like, anchor bias is real. It's really, really, really real. And so the only thing that I know is fairly universal among most people is difficulty will either produce failure and despair or great success. Like, that's, like, people, when they live up to a challenge they didn't think they could do, it fulfills people in a very huge, huge mean. You mean a challenge? No, a trigger warning is, you know what a trigger, everyone knows what a trigger warning is, right? Trigger warning is just simply like, this film contains violent depictions of this. And then people, you know, it's there to warn people who feel triggered when they see certain things. This film contains drug use, right? And so they're trying to do that to try to like help prepare you for a hard thing. And then often the preparation of a hard thing makes you less resilient emotionally. It's kind of funny, you know what I mean? It's hard, right? Honestly, it seems like that stuff, let's see. Honestly, it seems like they do that stuff not to get canceled. I don't know about that. I don't know if that's really canceling, like any movie, right? Like, they warn you about drug use. You're saying discipline will get you the furthest, basically? Yeah. I will say this is that discipline is probably your greatest path to freedom. Liberty is not being able to do whatever you want. Liberty is the ability to exercise your will. Those are two very different things. And some people get those very, very confused. Like, a very simple example is someone addicted to drugs. They're not exercising their liberty. They may be free to do what they want. They're not exercising their will. Their will has been taken over to something else. So, you know what I mean? Yeah, they're enslaved. They're enslaved to their body and stuff. Like, that. There's a difference, and people often goof up those two things. And so you don't want to be. You don't want to do that, right? Some people can be more free and be more locked down with rules than other people who have no rules. I mean, that's why you often see these kids that have really privileged upbringings, often highly addicted to drugs, highly, like, they're failing out of school. They're absolutely unachieving everything that their parents achieved. And it's because they're not actually free. They had more freedoms than you did. They just had less liberty because they effectively became victim to themselves on accident, and they had no idea how. They never learned that discipline and all those good things. Anyways, the name is DHH. You know, DHH, I don't mind a lot of his opinions, honestly. I think DHH and I are probably closer to having the same opinion than we are having different opinions. I don't like all of his takes. Like, recently he did the whole thing about like going to Windows. I hate Windows. I think his dropping of all types from JavaScript and that enjoying typeless typeless linting of JavaScript as a good thing. I'm not on his team either, right? But there's some things that I'm really on his team. You know, I wouldn't put it as a rare DHHW. I give him, like, he like everybody else has some positives, has some negatives, right? You know, I love how he's using Linux on Windows. Yes, it's using Linux on Windows. It's really because everybody wants to play Helldivers, okay? Can we be real here? It's because people just want to play Helldivers. That's all that's happening here. And he's like, oh, everybody, we're using Windows, okay? You know, everybody, we're using Windows, and I just happen to need a 480 Ti to open up NeoVim. Again.